but we have a very full agenda today. So good afternoon and welcome to the September 2023 System Business and Finance meeting. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ginger Velazquez. I'm the Executive Director for Business and Finance in the Office of Business Services. We have, as I mentioned, a full agenda, but before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. You have all been placed on mute, so please type any questions you might have into the chat box. And keep in mind that those chat questions and comments will go to everyone. We do have a team that is reviewing the questions as they come in, and we will try to get to all of them. But if time constrains us, we will be sure to review any unanswered questions after the meeting ends and follow up on those as well. So also, again, we will be recording our meetings and emailing each of you a link to the recording. So if you have additional questions that come up afterwards and need to review a segment of this meeting, or if you need presenter contact information, you will have all of that as well. And finally, always feel free to reach out to me and my team whenever you have questions, comments, or ideas. Bernadette Rossmore and Stacy Balmas are here to serve you as well and assist in resolving issues. And you will find contact information on the last slide of the presentation, so you can reference that at any time. So without further ado, we will begin the presentation with an update from the Office of Procurement Services. Casey Puckett, the Director of Procurement Services, has joined us. The floor is yours, Casey.
Thank you, Ginger. Appreciate the time. And thank you, everyone, for allowing me to come and talk to you today. I am Casey Puckett, the Director of Procurement Services. I serve here in Procurement Services underneath Aaron Carter, who I think you may be familiar with, at least his name, the Assistant Vice President of Procurement Services. We don't have a whole lot of updates today, but if you guys haven't seen, we are working on some of those policy changes for your P-card, and we're working on some really, we hope to be some really impactful changes with travel and some of those limits as well, and hopefully changing what those ranges look like. Just in general, if you ever have any questions that we can help address or concerns, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. We're here to help, and we look forward to hearing from you. But other than that, I think that's all I have today, Ginger.
Okay, thanks, Casey.
Thank
we
you.
always appreciate you guys regularly taking the time to be available to this group and give updates. So up next, we will hear from Carrie Canaday with updates regarding Source to Pay. Carrie?
Ginger, I think Carrie's having just some issues getting on the meeting.
Oh, no. Okay. We can... now, was anyone going to present with Carrie, Bernadette? Or
no,
maybe...
it was just Carrie.
Okay. Then what we will do is go ahead and jump. We can always come back, but we can move ahead to the next presentation, which is internal control update from Brent Rasmus, Dana Lebreau, Philippe Prisvish, and Derek Briles.
Thank you, Ginger, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here and give you guys yet another update on this exciting initiative. As we mentioned earlier, before the summer break, we were working on finalizing few important aspects on this project. And 3 years in, almost 4 on this initiative, we are delighted to say that we are at a final stretch here. So presenting with me will be Brent, Dana, Derek, and the agenda for today's meeting is we will discuss this initiative overhaul. We will also discuss the new policy and the new exception request application process. And we'll also discuss the implementation, which we can now proudly announce that we have a deadline for which this initiative will be completed, which is May 31, 2024. So that said, I'll turn it over to Brent for an overview of this initiative.
Thanks, Philippe, and good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to first acknowledge that many of you have heard versions of this presentation for several years now. We actually started this effort 3.5 years ago. We started in March 2020, and it's taken so long to get to the point that we're at now because we've had to pause the effort during the pandemic, and we've made several adjustments based on the great feedback that everybody's provided. But we're finally at a point to provide some updates for how this effort will be operationalized. And a sincere thanks to all of you who have helped throughout this whole process. I know it's been difficult to accommodate, especially those who have small staffing levels, but really appreciate everybody's help. So to work through this slide, this is related to the effort to improve internal controls by restricting the combined system access to equipment tracking and purchasing systems. So these 3 main bullet points essentially are the points we're here to address today. Why is it important? Because by having system access to both procurement and equipment tracking applications, employees just have too much control over the entire process of acquiring and tracking equipment. So this effort helps to protect the university from fraud. What do we need you to do? These prohibited role combinations need to be removed. And what are we going to do to help with this requirement? If the system access can't be distributed to other staff in your unit, there is an exception process, and it's going to require various levels of approval. But the important point here is that there must be a legitimate business reason for it. The exception process requires other controls be implemented, which reduce the overall risk by having the combined system access for procurement and equipment tracking, and reduces the overall risk down to more of an acceptable level. So more detail will be provided later in this presentation about that. Training resources, which includes ideas that many of you who have gone through this process already are being enhanced and will be available. And System Office Shared Services is here to help too. Derek and Philippe have been involved from the start, and they are terrific to work with. So I'll turn it over to Dana to talk about the policy, and we can go to the next slide.
Thanks, Brent. So the various budget offices at the universities and system level work together with the policy office to craft a new policy to provide some guidance as to what is and is not allowed as far as these conflicting roles. The policy was sent out for review system-wide a couple of weeks ago, and that open comment period has since expired. And we're now just fine-tuning the policy, and it's going to be published in October, a couple of weeks. Just some highlights of the policy: that it does clearly provide which roles may not be combined, so segregation of duties for procurement and equipment management roles. It does outline the process for obtaining an exception, and Derek and Philippe are going to go a little bit more into that. It does specify that the exception requests are valid for up to 2 years. So 2 years at the most. If you only need it for a shorter time, please indicate that. And this is going to be implemented in October. So more to come with that with Derek and Philippe.
Thanks, Dana. So as this new policy rolls out next month, we're also rolling out some other things to make this process easier for you all that are going to be impacted by it. I'm sure that there's some UIC folks here that have gone through the existing process, including Dana, who can attest to the difficulty of it. So to help support everyone that's going to be impacted by this, we are currently working with AITS to develop a new exception request form that's going to provide a lot of additional functionality missing from the current process, as well as just an easier to use interface. So a couple of the shortcomings of the current process that we're fixing that I want to highlight is: one, you're going to be able to save your progress in the form and come back to it later. Right now, it's a one and done, right? You've got to prepare all of your information in advance, have that ready to go before you enter the form. If you put content in the form, but you don't submit it today, you lose it. And that can be very difficult because the form does require an extensive amount of information from the submitter. So this one will allow you to save and come back. It's also going to integrate with a lot of other information available in the data warehouse. So we're trying to integrate it with the security application so that the submitter, once they enter the UIN or net ID of the person they're making the request for, it's going to bring up all of the roles that they already have provisioned. So you'll be able to see right then and there what they have and what you can and cannot request. It's also going to allow you to view the status of it after you submit. So anyone involved in the process, the submitter, the unit head reviewer, the college level reviewer, at UIC, that additional third level reviewer of the dean who has to submit a specific form, and then that final university level review. All of those folks will be able to log into this application, see a dashboard of all of the requests and the status of those requests, and not be dependent on an emailed PDF, which is all you get today. If you lose that PDF, then you no longer have any sort of record of that exception. It's going to have automated reminder emails for requests and for expiration, so that when your request is getting near the expiration date, the system will remind you to take whatever action is necessary. If you're just going to let it expire, you don't need it anymore, great. If you need to submit a new request after this one expires, it'll allow you to do that as well. So yeah, we're really excited to roll that out. And then another element that we are updating, I'm going to throw a link here into the chat. So a lot of you might already be familiar with the Internal Controls website. It provides a conflicting roles report that shows everyone across the University of Illinois system who holds one of these prohibited role combinations. And today you'll see about 450 total folks on it, roughly around there. But we know that that number is actually slightly lower. So AITS is also working on developing some new data processes that will allow us to fine tune this report, because right now it is showing individuals who hold FabWeb unit rep and biennial unit contact roles who have received an approved exception to hold those roles, but they're still showing as having a prohibited role combination on this report. We are fixing that so that report will be more accurate. So as soon as that should go into effect at the same time as the policy, at the same time as the new exception request process. And we expect that number, that total number of conflicting employees to immediately drop after that report is updated. And then the final thing we're instituting is a control process around P cards. So a P card holder is one of those prohibited roles. You cannot have that and an equipment management role. Up until now, there has been no enforcement measures for that. So we're also working in the security application so that it'll query those P card tables and will not allow a USC to request that equipment management role for a P card holder. And then I'm going to hand it off now to Philippe, who's going to get a little more into the details of the implementation process.
Thank you, Derek. I would like to just reiterate what Brad said at the very beginning. Now that we've got a deadline of May 31, something must be done. And those of us who have the prohibited role combinations must take action by that deadline, which means that if you are not using these roles, if they're not necessary for you, please reach out to get those roles removed. If you do need them, then you must submit an exception request, and it must be approved. If it's not approved, then you must work with the approver to find out different mitigation techniques to make sure that your exception request gets approved. It must be approved by May 31. If no action is taken by that time, then AITS will start removing these roles automatically. So if you do need that role, you have to work on getting that exception request process approved. But please rest assured that it's not going to be an overnight switch off of the roles. If you are in conflict and if there are issues, we will work with you in finding the best solution, whether there are mitigation techniques or whether there's we can assist with your exception request process. So SOSS will assist you through that. We'll provide consulting. There'll be also emails that will be sent to you so that you are not surprised when they come into the office without these roles. There will be a lot of assistance, training, and resources to help you through that process, and we'll be working continuously with the units that have those conflicts. So that said, we'd like to open us to any questions you may have. This is the opportunity for all of you to get clarification from us about this process. But if you don't have any questions, we are delighted to see that you are in agreement and happy to join us on this final stretch of this journey.
Thank you for that update. And Philippe, there was one question in the chat, but Derek took care of it. So I think we are good for now. So just to go back one step, Carrie was able to get her technical issues under control. So Carrie, we are going to go ahead and hit on the source to pay update. Can you hear us okay, Carrie?
I can. Thank you,
Okay.
Ginger.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Canaday, and I'm here to give you some updates about the Source to Pay program. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk to you about the current projects. The main project that we are focusing on right now, we refer to as Stage 4 AP automation. So I want to talk a little bit about that and get into what does this project mean to end users, and those would be end users to iBuy. And then show you, I have a timeline within the presentation, and then I want to get into next steps. So if we'll go to the next slide. When you hear us talk about AP automation, we wanted to give you a better understanding of what does this mean. And what you need to know about this is that the university is changing the invoice process, and we are further automating it. And to do that, we are implementing a module for university payables called Digital Mailroom. And Digital Mailroom is a Jagger product, so it will work with iBuy and all our other Jagger products. And we are doing this because what we are trying to do is move the bulk of our invoice processing from Banner to iBuy. And I think it's important that I kind of highlight what these changes mean to end users. Digital Mailroom is not a product that end users really use or that you will see on a daily basis. University Payables uses it, but there are direct benefits to end users. And so I wanted to run through the benefits that we've identified so far and things that I think you will really like. So because we have plans to implement Digital Mailroom, once we do that for end users, the university will be getting better data from purchase orders and invoices. So this directly will impact end users by reducing the needs for questions of end users. So this is a change that will save you guys a lot of time. Other things that this will impact is we are trying to get rid of a lot of the change requests that you're being asked to do today. This implementation and the steps we have to go through to do it will accomplish that. So by reducing change orders, that will also save end user time. Once we get Digital Mailroom implemented, we will have more invoicing in iBuy. And so this will allow us to bypass the Banner receiving process that we have today on standing orders. This change will also save you time. And just to remind you that standing order process today, the way it is in Banner, when you have a large PO, that's when you would be using a standing order, and you don't have to receive against it on that first step until you have an order over $10,000. Once you have an order of $10,000 or more, you receive it, but then you have to go back and receive against all the previous invoices too. So by moving invoicing from Banner to iBuy, we will be able to bypass that, and it will be much more streamlined. So in iBuy, you will only have to receive on invoices over 10,000K. So that's another change that will save end user time. And another big change will be we are adding FOB codes to iBuy. So what this means is that you won't have to worry about shipping costs on orders, because you'll be able to go in and add an FOB code in iBuy that communicates what that should be. This is also going to be a change that will save you time. So if we go to the next slide, I think it's the timeline. And I wanted to include this just so it kind of shows you our overall plans for stage 4. It's color coded here. There's a lot of information on this timeline, but the thing that I want you to see from it is that this part of the project is broken into 3 phases. So phase 1, you can see on the left-hand side, it's estimated at approximately 4 months. We started a lot of this activity around August 1st, and we'll be working on them through the end of December. This is our preparation phase for digital mailroom. We have to go in and make some changes to our systems so that data flows the way it needs to, back and forth between iBuy and Banner. Even though we're moving some of these processes from Banner to iBuy, Banner is still our system of record. So we still have Banner, but the end user processing, we're trying to move over to iBuy. So to do that, we have to do different things with integrations and work with specific suppliers so we can get some of their data coming over better. And once we get there, then we start that implementation of digital mailroom. That whole process is phase 2. We refer to that as migration because that's when, as we're implementing this new module, that's when we're going to start moving suppliers from Banner to iBuy. We think this implementation will take about 6 months to get digital mailroom in place. During that implementation, we do work with what we refer to as waves to start moving over suppliers. University has thousands of suppliers, so we have to divide them out into waves. We start with small waves, and then once we get some processes in place and make sure all that data is moving over the way it should be, and we can process things the way we need to, we make those bigger waves so we can get to a point to get all those suppliers over into iBuy. So within that 6-month period, we'll be able to get through 3 waves. That will be a big bulk of our suppliers, but then we still have a lot of work to do after we get digital mailroom in place. It's going to be what we would call a rolling implementation so that we can continue these waves to capture all of those suppliers and bring them into iBuy. And we expect that to take approximately 18 months once we get digital mailroom implemented. And in addition to moving those suppliers over in phase 3, we're also going to work on refinement of our systems. And so what that means is we're going to continue to look for ways to optimize processes within iBuy. Once we have better data coming into iBuy with our purchase orders and our invoices, that's where we're going to see even more opportunities than the screen I just covered a few minutes ago. We expect to be able to identify more opportunities to make improvements in iBuy. So a lot of work still happening for source to pay, and that's kind of our plan over the next 1.5 years or so. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to talk about next steps that you will start seeing as end users this fall. I just talked about changes for FOB codes. We want to get those into iBuy. So work with that is going to be starting right away. There's going to be some communications and workshops in October around FOB codes. And Our goal is to, once we start that communication and set some expectations about what FOB codes will mean in iBuy, we will do the training for users on what you need to know to start doing that in iBuy. And we expect that to happen late this fall. Dates for all of these items will be shared as we have more information. And then I just covered this on the timeline, but that implementation for digital mailroom will start in early January. And it will be that rolling implementation. Just know that we are still working with stakeholders and gathering feedback and looking from a strategy standpoint to, once we start getting better data into iBuy, continuing those optimizations. So that's a quick update on where we're at with source to pay, and I'll see if we have any questions.
Carrie, there is one question in the chat. Will this replace emailing invoices to UPay vendor invoices?
Do we have anybody from payables on the line? I'm not quite
Melissa.
sure.
Yeah, Melissa is here.
What's the best way to answer that question, Melissa?
So I think the best answer is there's a possibility that we'll replace it, but once we get further into the implementation and design with digital mailroom, we'll have more clarity on that answer. The invoice, UPay vendor invoices email for now, it will not be going away. That process will continue. It may be that we redirect that message to somewhere with digital mailroom, but I'm not sure that we have a concrete answer on the process yet. But that'll be defined in Carrie's middle section there of working with digital mailroom to get that implemented and up and running.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see anything yet.
Thank you guys for the time. Have a good day.
Thanks, Carrie. So next on our agenda, Derek and Philippe are going to join us again, along with Karen Greenwalt from the CFO's office, to discuss the OBFS website redesign project. So Karen, Philippe, and Derek, take it away.
Thanks, Ginger.
Yep.
So I am lucky to be one of the project sponsors for the OBFS website redesign project, along with Bill Patterson. And you will hear from Derek and Philippe to provide an update on this project. And what we'll be covering today, just a quick note to stakeholders, which I'll cover next. We'll have a project status update from Derek, and then some really good news from Philippe on the News Center. And so for the stakeholders, a quick little message. If you have already received contact from Derek or Philippe that they need your assistance in updating content, that it's now to the point where we definitely need to hear from you. October 31st is the deadline where we're going to cut off updates unless they're urgent. And as you can imagine, it's pretty important that once we launch the new look, that we avoid having out-of-date content wherever possible. So it's definitely a critical piece to our success, and we thank you for your help to this point in providing input. I think you will agree it's a much welcomed and needed overhaul of this site, and we've already received a little bit of a preview to it, which Philippe will cover. But for now, that's it for me, and I think Derek takes it from here. So thank you.
Thanks, Karen. So like Karen said, we have moved on from the content review phase of the project to the content migration. So behind the scenes, there's a separate team of folks who are working now to actively transfer content into the new format that will be made available on the new Business and Finance website. Now, the content review phase, as Karen said, is still ongoing. There is some overlap there. But we are hoping to wrap up all of that review by the end of October. And that, like she said, is really focused on making sure we are not migrating inaccurate or outdated content. But while we work on that, we are working on the actual migration, and that does include building templates for these pages. So I'm gonna try to give you a look at what that will be like. So this is the OBFS website as it exists today. We all know it and probably have some form of love-hate relationship with it. The new website hopefully is going to be much cleaner. So this is just a draft of what it might look like. So instead of having a big wall of text and no global navigation, right? You get into a page, where'd that top navigation bar go? It's gone. It's hard to navigate. We're going to collapse it all down to these 6 main topics of accounting and budgeting, buying and contracts, paying people, travel, equipment management, and payments to the university. Sort of divorcing the content from the unit that owns it, because we don't want to set some sort of bar of entry to users to know what unit processes certain types of transactions in order to find that content. Then there will be a secondary navigation, so don't worry, policies and procedures are still there. The forms section will continue much like it is today, but in an improved format. The news center will be there. And then we're also instituting a new applications section that will have all the business and finance applications listed with the ability to log into them, as well as any additional information, training materials, etc. But we are also still maintaining the drop down on the home page, so you could log in quickly from them there. When you get into it, again, this is all just placeholder content, but hopefully, you know, a much cleaner look and feel, where we're presenting the most approachable, relatable content out front, and then letting people sort of dive deeper into it through a progressive disclosure of getting more and more specific content as the user navigates through the site. And let me go back to my presentation if I can find it. There it is. So we will be sometime in the November timeframe, after that content review deadline is passed, we will start doing active user testing. So as sections are done in the development environment, we'll bring in users to complete tasks in those sections to ensure that it is actually easier to navigate and you can find content quickly, like we're hoping you will. And that will also include the stakeholders who own that content. So if your section goes live, you own the content in that section, you will also get access to test that out and make sure that it meets your expectations as well. So now I am going to pass it off to Philippe, and we can talk about sort of an exciting release that's already happened to give you a preview of what the new site might be like.
Right. Thanks, Derek. And as we are talking about the News Center, which is officially called Business and Finance News Center, or Business and Finance News, I wanted to remind all of you that the new website will also have a new URL. It will be a BuzzFin URL, so Business and Finance BuzzFin together. That's the new URL. And what was the dev environment Derek was showing you a second ago was that BuzzFin environment. So of course, communications will be shared and you will be able to see that. So now the News Center. I mentioned in the previous meetings that we will be doing the overhaul of the new News Center, and it will consist of the data load. So we'll be loading all of the subscribers, all of the categories, and we will also archive 2 years worth of the news. So I'm glad to say that all of that has happened. We migrated all of you who have been subscribers to the old News Center, and we did archive 2 years worth of articles. So if we can see the new News Center, that's how it looks like. It's been deployed. It was deployed actually a couple of weeks ago, and it's a totally new, different look and feel. You will notice that the formatting is much clearer. You have categories that have also been changed and will be consistent or are consistent with the new Business and Finance website. And all of the archived categories have been crosswalked. So you will still be able to find old articles under new categories. And look how quick and easy it is to filter them out. You can simply just click on the categories and all of the articles under equipment management category or buying contracts will show up. Now, if you would like to filter multiple different categories at the bottom, you can go and select different categories and also select different fiscal years, and only articles under these filters will come up. And if you type a keyword, additionally, now you have 3 filters that will show you just articles for property equipment management within fiscal year 23. That is what you can see in the new news center when you go to articles. And when you open an article, you will be able to see all of the categories that this article is pertaining to. This is what you see in the new news center, but most of you are used to consuming your news through your email, and that continues happening. As you probably have seen last week and this week, you've been receiving news center in a different format, which is consistent to this layout. It still is relating from branding standpoints to OBFS website, and that will be updated the moment the new Boston website kicks. So we are temporarily making the branding look like the old website, with an understanding that that will be updated, and the new skin within the emails will also be updated. So again, if you have new colleagues, feel free to send them to the new news center so that they can subscribe. If you don't want to receive the news from the news center, you can unsubscribe. All of you who have been subscribed have been migrated, so you shouldn't have any issues. If you are not receiving the news for some reason, feel free to subscribe to it, and you will start receiving them right away. So again, this was launched initially to enhance the functionality of the new news center, and we committed to launching it before the new website, and we are proud to say that it's been working great and will continue, and will be embedded in a new business and finance website when it launches in January. So that said, I would like to open us to any questions about this project that you may have.
I don't see anything in the chat yet, but thank you. These updates are so exciting, and I think many people are looking forward to the new website that's really going to benefit the entire business community. So it does not look like we have questions in the chat. So again, Karen and Philippe and Derek, thank you. And we are at the point in our agenda where we are going to take a 5-minute break. So please be back at 1:45. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are going to hear next from Stacy Balmas and Brian Zumpf from the Office of Business Services, specifically our System Policy Office, along with Darren Strader and Amanda Schleifer from University Payables with business and financial policy updates.
Stacey, I think I'm going to let Darren and Amanda go
Okay.
first because they have the more exciting news.
Okay, thanks, Stacy.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Schleifer, and I am an assistant director here in University Payables. Darren is here, but I'm going to do the presentation today. So if we have any questions, we can always holler at him, but I'm going to do the presentation. So if we can go to the next slide. We have updated 7.6, the university purchasing card policy, and this was kind of long overdue. So what was updated here? Well, we increased your single transaction or the single transaction limits up to $7,500. And that was from $4,999. And then the credit limit has been increased to $35,000, where it was at $25,000 before. Kind of the big one here is we have removed the prohibition of having credit cards on file. So cardholders won't have to send in exceptions anymore to have their card number on file. We also removed the requirement for written justification of increased cycle limit above the 15,000, and we did that after the open comments. We looked at the policy and decided that now DCMs could set the limits at what they wanted. They don't have to send that in to have it above the $15,000 cycle limit. And the next thing that we did was we updated the small fuel purchases. Now units like Prairie Institute and those, some of the extension offices, they need to go pick up 5-10 gallons of fuel for a tractor, a non-car truck, road vehicle, a lawnmower or something like that. Well, before they were having to get exceptions for all of those. Well, as long as there's no contract involved, we are allowing those small fuel purchases. And the next thing is utilities are now exempt from house accounts. So for current utility payments, not past due, no late fees, none of that, but for current utility payments, those can now be placed on the P card as well. Next slide here. Why was policy updated? Well, like I said, it's been quite a while since policy 7.6 has been revamped, and we needed to bring it up to current card industry practices. The card number on file back when 7.6 was written, that was a big no-no. People were putting card numbers on file on the walls of the cafes around town and whatnot. Well, that's still not allowed, but as long as you are securing your card number on file with username and password and all that good stuff, it's secure. So we don't need to do that. And the department sent in all sorts of, they gave us their input. Hey, this would make our lives easier. We did have many discussions on things. When you're just approving every exception, because that's now it should be allowable. It's time to update policy after all the risks have been looked at. The next slide, please. The benefits of the updates. The ease for the cardholders. Now, if they need to pay a utility or they need to go out and get that fuel real quick, they don't have to wait 10 to 15 business days to get an exception, sent in and approved. It should just help them be able to do their jobs in a more timely fashion. And of course, there's the reduction of card exceptions. And we had the open comments, and we had an overwhelming positive response. So thank you if you did give us some input there. But we did have a couple of things that we wanted to let people know about. There were some concerns about keeping card numbers on file. Well, we are opening that up, but units are allowed to, they can have stricter rules than we have here in card services. So if they decide they don't want their card holders to keep their card numbers on file, absolutely, you can do that. Another concern that we saw with the card numbers on file was keeping your card tied to somebody else's account. That's if they have access to that card and to get it charged, that's card sharing. So that is not allowed. So really, if your card number is on file, it needs to be your account. You've got the password, you've got that all protected. It is yours. No one else can charge it. The second thing was, does service the bullet point, it's afternoon, I apologize, my lips aren't working. Does services involving labor and or installation changing, we've now changed that to services, meaning all services, even those not involving labor, are now prohibited. We have updated this after a lot of discussion, even after some of these meetings. We're updating that to say services involving labor and or installation are allowed if provided by a master contract. Please refer to the university contract search, and we'll give you that link so that you can click on that. But that will give a possible list of vendors. So if there's questions, you can always, go out and see if there's a master contract for something. Reach out to us. We can reach out to purchasing if you reach out to purchasing, but that verbiage will now be updated. Next slide, please. When will this happen? Monday. This is going to happen next Monday. So this is coming. It's coming very quickly. So we are excited to get this all rolled out. But if you have any questions, please send in a service desk ticket, send in an email to Card Services, and we can help out with, individual questions, if they come up as policy is in place. And one other thing that I wanted to put out there is, if a card holder, if somebody's card is currently set at a 4999 single transaction limit and a 25,000 cycle limit, we will be updating that. And it is for only that spend profile, only the 4999 and the 25,000. Those will be updated to the 7,500 and 35,000. So if there's any other combination of that, those were special. We are not updating those. Those will need to be updated through the P-Card software through the department card manager. I've seen some questions pop up here, so I was just going to look real quick. Looks like Jim talked about the 499 and 25,000. Somebody said, I've seen a few times vendors charging the wrong card numbers because they have a number on file for one department, but another department is making the purchase. The vendors have used a card when there is an outstanding balance. They shouldn't be doing that. Vendors should only be charging a card that is that individual. So, and generally those card number on files are associated with Amazon is one, it's only for that one particular person and whatnot. So if there's an issue with that, I would suggest reaching out to Card Services, and we can look at those on an individual basis. Darren put something in there. when will the forms be updated? We are looking at everything and getting everything done as close to October 2nd as we can. So that will all be updated around next Monday. Any more questions? Like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free. Actually, I think I have one more slide here to go over. Today's our last presentation, and like I said, this all goes live next Monday. But if something comes up, please reach out to us through the service desk ticket or email, and we will be more than happy to get back with you as quickly as possible, and hope everybody enjoys this update.
And Amanda, did you see another question came in
Oh.
from Denise?
I did not see that. Thank you. Will the drop down? I'm not sure what you're referring to, because the DCM should be updated. So if this sounds more like an individual question, so if you could reach out to card services, that would probably be the preferred method, because there shouldn't be anything with 7.6 that there's an update to the DCM in the software. So I think we probably need to address that on an individual basis.
And if I can just jump in really quickly, this only
Sure.
applies to the P card and not the T card. So just to
Yes.
make sure that that's clear too. So it's
Yeah.
only the P card.
Thank you, Stacy.
And then if you guys are done, Ginger, I just have a couple policy updates to share with everyone.
Yep. So
Okay.
thank you, Amanda.
Yes. This was very exciting. We've been very excited to share this news with everybody. So just some updates. You've heard about 2 of our policies on 7.6, which you just heard about, and the new 9.1.2 on internal controls. We recently published updates to 7.5 on emergency purchases, just sort of giving a little bit more clarification on that. We have a couple open comments that are going to be coming up the next month or so, but we do have one that's live now and it closes tomorrow. I've just added a link to it in the chat. This is a new policy 15.1.5, which basically requires any system employee at any of the 3 universities or in a system office who is traveling internationally to get the international travel insurance. Now the system's going to pay for it. Your unit's not going to be out of pocket anything for this, but it's just requiring that you get that. So that is currently available now in the open comment blog, and it'll close at 11:59 tomorrow night. So we've heard from 7 people, but we always want to hear from everybody. So if you have any thoughts on that, please do take advantage of the open comment. So thank you so much, Ginger.
Yep. Thanks, Stacy. So we will now hear additional, or Noel, no, I guess we already went through the payables. So we are skipping down to temporary control numbers. So thank you. And we are going to hear from Cami Anders from University Payroll and Benefits, who will be providing an update on those temporary control numbers. Cami?
Thank you, Ginger. Let me get my screen shared here. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Cami Anders. I am the payroll manager for the Foreign National Service Center group within University Payroll and Benefits. And I am going to cover a few things about temporary control numbers today, going over the purpose of them, how to get them. And then there was a big change this year that I wanted to share with everyone so everyone can understand why these changes are occurring. So the purpose of temporary control numbers overall are for the employment process. So in HERFI, the social security number field, if a social security number does not exist, that field has to have something in it. So we have come up with temporary control numbers, or TCNs, to be used in that field. It is important that the foreign nationals realize that TCNs are only for this purpose. In fact, they really don't need the number themselves. If they do, in the past, we have heard of them trying to open bank accounts, get credit cards and driver's license, and even filing their income tax returns.
So it's important that they know that it's not to be used outside of the university at all. It's pretty easy to identify what TCNs are because they all start with 000. The groups of individuals that TCNs are for non-student employees, student employees, and fellows. And the process for these vary a little bit, and also depending on campus. So for non-student employees, they must apply for a social security number if they are paid. I know it happens a lot at Urbana, less in the other campuses, but if an individual is unpaid holding a 0%, they cannot apply for a social security number. So that step would be skipped. But if they are paid any amount, they have to go apply for a social security number first. After that, depending on the campus, is where they'll get their TCN. So Urbana and Springfield, those are requested by the units from our office, from UPB. And then for Chicago, the TCNs are obtained at the OIS employee orientation directly by the Foreign National. Both places, though, or all three campuses, do require the same documentation. So it's going to be that receipt of application for social security number, again, if they're paid, and then documentation indicating pending employment, AKA an offer letter. Just to go over a quick thing about the receipt of application, we've seen lately where Social Security Administration is allowing individuals to schedule an application appointment, and they'll get what looks like a confirmation that they've applied. In reality, they've only applied for the appointment. So if they try to give you something that looks like a screenshot, that is not the receipt of application that we're looking for. The receipt of application only comes from physically going to Social Security Administration and applying for the SSN. And it will say right at the top, you've applied for your SSN on such and such date, and you should expect to receive your card within 2 weeks. So just make sure that they are providing the correct one for that. And then the offer letter, it does not need to be signed. It doesn't have to have any special information to it. Really, we're just looking to see if the individual is paid or not. Again, because if they're paid, we need that receipt of application for SSN. And then for student employees and fellows, this is where this year there's been a change, and the next slide I'll go over what those changes are and how this happened. But the process right now for the interim, we're expecting this to go through spring. For student employees, the first thing a unit needs to do is verify if a TCN already exists. So for those of you that may have access to an iCard query through iCard programs, you can use that with the UIN and see if they already have a TCN. If not, you can either contact iCard programs to get that access to the query, or you can contact the ID center and request the request a TCN if it exists already. If they say, or if the application or if iCard, the ID center says one does not exist, then those are going to be requested from our office, and that is for all three campuses. And instead of the receipt of application, because we were made aware of some timing issues when it comes to students, instead of that receipt of application, we require the statement of certification of application for SSN. And it essentially says that as a student, I am aware that I am receiving wages and I must apply for an SSN, or as a student receiving fellowship, I am not eligible for an SSN and therefore should not get one. But either way, they are acknowledging that they need to know what the next step is to obtain a taxpayer ID number. Okay, so those changes to the student side of things happened because prior to January of 2023, all students, including US citizens, who did not provide a social security number when they applied to the University of Illinois, were given a TCN. We learned that it actually was not even upon acceptance. This was as soon as they applied, even if they were not accepted, a number was given to them automatically. So over the last couple of decades, those numbers were exhausted. that happened in January of 2023. So any student who was admitted for various reasons after January of 2023 was not given a TCN automatically. So this fall, we've had a lot of students who already have one because they did apply and were accepted prior to January of 2023, but anyone who applied and was accepted after that do not have one already. So that's the important part of making sure that a TCN exists or not, because we're in that gray area of some have and some don't. So once you verify that they did not receive one, then UPB will issue one for those students. And again, as I mentioned, this is an interim process because there is an iCard web application coming next year. We're expected around March, where the same type of documentation will be needed for the Herfey side, but the web application will allow you to generate a TCN just after logging on. It's going to be a very simple process. All right, any questions?
I do not see anything in the chat.
All right,
So
thank you all.
thank you. Good updates. And I do have to go back once again on the agenda. I did skip over university payables updates, and Melissa, I know you don't have a lot to share, but want to make sure that we get an update from you today. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ginger. You know, I've already participated, so you've already gone over. So.
Well, Amanda shared the wonderful news, and that's all I was thinking about from the payables perspective. So sorry about that.
No worries. So I am Melissa Plotner. I'm the Associate Director of Payment Operations and Payables. Most of you know me as related to anything Chrome River related. So that's what I have updates on today. So the customer advisory group has been really busy. We did take some time off around the year-end time, but we're getting back in full swings. And so while I don't have a whole lot to share today, know that behind the scenes, we are working on some exciting changes that are coming. But maybe not so exciting, but I wanted to get out there so everybody was aware. When we first rolled out Chrome River, we did not have reporting available. And so in an effort to get units data that they needed, we released the standard reports option that Chrome River provides. Sort of with the caveat knowing that they were in the process of decommissioning those reports. Well, now we finally have a confirmed date that the standard reports in Chrome River are going to go away. It's not soon, but March 30th will be here before we know it. So on that day, we will lose access to the standard reports in Chrome River. But the data warehouse team has been very busy and very accommodating with meeting with various units to develop templates that will somewhat mirror the standard reports that we currently have in Chrome River. But with that being said, we, with the help of Aaron Carter's office, had purchased a data analysis connector. And so the data from Chrome River is being exported into the data warehouse. So while we were limited with the standard reports in Chrome River, we don't want to limit anybody in the data warehouse. And so those reports can be built upon, they can be enhanced, additional things can be added to that. So we're working on some different communications that will be coming out that will provide different training opportunities if you've never been into the data warehouse. And we're working to work on getting those templates developed so that if you needed to run a, one of those sort of standard reports, that it would already be there and available for you. You wouldn't have to develop that from scratch. Next slide, please. So the newest thing that has occurred in Chrome River is that we needed to add a field where we captured the traveler's name. And this is for some state reporting requirements. So we are working on, we've received some feedback. We're going to update the communication that was sent out. But for this traveler name field, if you have an individual that has never had a Chrome River profile, their name will not appear in that traveler's name list. So if you have a situation where you're purchasing, airfare in advance, this individual hasn't been set up in Chrome River yet, there is an option in that list that is named Traveler Not Found. Please feel free to select that option. And then once that individual is required to have a profile set up, so they want to claim per diem, they want to claim mileage, something that they have to do to be reimbursed for. Once they're established, their name will be populated in that list, and it will remain in that list for future transactions. So that is really all that I have for today. Unless anybody has any questions, I am happy to answer those for you now.
Not seeing anything, Melissa.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your time today. And Ginger, I will pass it back to you.
Thank you. And next we are going to hear from Purchasing and Contract Management, specifically from Deborah Matlock, Aaron Rosenthal, and Jill Menezes.
And hello, everyone. And we've got our slides up, and this is Deborah Matlock. I'm the Executive Director of UIC Purchasing and Contract Management. And with me are Aaron Rosenthal, Senior Associate Director, as well as Jill Menezes, Director of UIS Purchasing and Contract Management. The first thing that we want to talk about is a new law that was signed by the governor last month, and Aaron is going to talk about that.
Thank you, Deborah. Let's kick things off with some positive legislative related news, and that's not always something that we can say. But on House Bill 2862, or HB 2862 for short, we ultimately can. Back at the beginning of August, on August 4th, 2023, Governor Pritzker signed into law amendments to a law called the Day and Temporary Labor Services Act. And as the title of the law suggests, this law and amendments impact temporary service workers, temporary service agencies, and notably third-party clients that those temporary service agencies provide temporary service workers to. And we're going to come back to that third point in a minute. When the updates to HB 2862 went into effect, we received a number of inquiries from concerned units as well as vendors over the impact of the updates, because notably our university has a number of temporary service contracts in place in various areas. The primary concern related to a provision of that updated law that, in loose terms, states that once a temporary service worker works at a third-party client for more than 90 calendar days, they must be paid equivalent pay and benefits to the entity's full-time employees. There is a lot more nuance, but cutting right to the good news, we discussed these updates with University Counsel, and the university's position is that the law does not apply to University of Illinois. That position is driven by some case law. It gets at the definition of a third-party client, and based on that case law, there's an argument that the law doesn't apply to the university. And again, that is the university's position. Accordingly, for the university and its temporary service contracts, it is going to be status quo. There is not a need for us to revisit rates and get into all those complicated implications of what equivalent pay and benefits to full-time employees means. And that is great news. Any questions from your units or vendors on this topic should please be directed to your university purchasing department. And with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Executive Director Deborah Matlock to talk about UIC Purchasing and Contract Management's FY23 final metrics.
So thanks, Aaron. We're sharing this information with you so that you have some sense of the sheer volume of transactions that we handle on behalf of UIC, and also to discuss some interesting trends. So as you can see on this chart that, I'm looking at pulling a bigger version so I can see it better. But anyway, you can see that of the total contracts executed, for example, we did $428 million in contracts. We also did over 74,000 purchase orders, which had a PO value of $722 million. There is some duplication from the standpoint that any expenditure contract does have to have a PO, a complementary PO in the system for invoices to in fact be issued and paid against that expenditure contract. But you can see that we have increased in our volume of both expenditure as well as revenue generating contracts. And we've also increased in our, not in our total number of contracts this year, year over year, but we have increased in the number of particularly exemptions and exceptions. The increase in our ability to use exemptions and exceptions directly allows us to do less competitive solicitations. But here are some of the key takeaways. Our contract volume has increased 12% FY23 over FY22, but 75% of the contracts assigned in FY22, when we in fact merged with and were aligned with the Office of Business Development Services or Contract Services Office UIC over FY21. Just in this past month, we received 196 requests for mutually executed contracts, and we currently have 522 open contracts. Exceptions and exemptions, as I stated, have increased substantially, 44% FY23 over FY21 and 14% over the past fiscal year. To date, we have received for this fiscal year 854 requisitions for small purchases. As most people are aware, we try and turn those around within 48 hours. And we currently have 16 active and in-process competitive solicitations, plus we've received requests for 6 new competitive solicitations as of the beginning of this fiscal year. We did award 4 RFPs as of 7/1/23. Aaron?
And Deborah, yeah, just to piggyback on your comments, Deborah, and underscore a couple comments. I mean, we really have seen these massive increases in transactional volume. In support of that, we are actively working to obtain additional staff to keep up with these volumes. But we're also aware right now, in the meantime, these huge increases in volume are increasing transactional processing times. So a couple comments related to that. First, just thank you. We greatly appreciate everyone's patience and understanding as we're working to staff up against this increasing volume. If there's ever going to be a purchasing or a contract transaction that will have an adverse operational impact, if it's not processed by a certain date, please let us know. We can have our teams triage and expedite that accordingly. And lastly, a final plug as we gear up for posting of some additional positions, please, if you know of anyone that would be a good fit for these purchasing and contracting roles, please send them our way.
Thanks, Aaron, and thank you, Ginger. Are there any questions? We don't want to forget that Jill is also with us, and so Jill has also seen an increase at UIS, but she doesn't track metrics at the level that we do, just because of the sheer volume here.
Correct. And we do offer up the same thing. If you have a contract that needs to get processed quickly, or a purchase order that needs to be processed quickly, please contact us so that we can put it at the top of the file. And remember though, not everything is an emergency, so try to get it to us as quickly as possible so that we can have plenty of time to get everything done for you and do it correctly and as efficiently as we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah and Aaron and Jill. I am not seeing anything in the chat. So, and now we will turn our attention to Charla Roberts from the Office of Procurement Diversity, who will introduce us to EKI Digital. Charla?
There's going to be a quick little switch up. I am here today, but I'm going to yield the floor to Nadia Torrance of my office. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone see me? Been having
Yes.
problems with this.
Yes, we can now.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nadia Torrance, Business Operations Specialist with Office of Procurement Diversity. And today we are highlighting Robert Blackwell, CEO of EKI, one of the awardees for IPEC 2140 IT service contract. You can find this contract award on iBuy under standing orders forms for more information on that. And without further ado, I will now yield the floor to Mr. Blackwell. So thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen really quickly, take you through a quick presentation and kind of an analytics tool that we built. So 1 second here. Let's see here. Screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So quickly, I'm going to take you through a presentation we call Enabling the Quantitative Lean Digital Enterprise. So this is about me. Actually, I went to the University of Illinois. I kind of describe myself as an unemployable math misfit. I went to school, studied math, and I've been in kind of quantitative related businesses since I worked at IBM, and I was an analyst there, and I wrote all the algorithms that would give salespeople signals to upgrade machines. I was a quantitative trader and done a lot of work writing financial modeling systems for large organizations. So what I think is that I put here, the quants are coming. AI is going to disrupt really every industry. It's going to be a part of finance, technology, and operations. So this is actually me when I was a trader. The reason why there are no more trading floors in Chicago is because all the opportunity identification is algorithmic and execution is digital, supported by super fast infrastructure. So by using advanced analytics, you can actually find efficiency in your operations. This just said these are some of the leaders, and we call that in the quantitative lean and digital categories. So about our company, we were founded in 1998, and I kind of describe ourselves as a quantitative portfolio management company. We hire scientists, analysts, architects, and engineers, and most of the work we've done has been for really large organizations. So the three areas that we focus on is we call outcome-based architecture. So we help large organizations create kind of efficient enterprise architecture. Then we used we call it advanced analytics to help you optimize portfolios of what we call business need and acquired assets. And then from there, intelligent automation. So here's how we look at quantitative portfolio management. Can you use advanced analytics to help what we call monetizable opportunities that align to stakeholder experiences and lean operations, and then help you optimize, we call a portfolio of acquired solutions and assets. So we use kind of advanced portfolio management to help you do this. And this middle are the kind of the capabilities that we have. So what this says is we can use advanced analytics to help you identify return and to identify optimization or spend optimization opportunities. And in portfolio management, we can do is to help you understand what your cost structure is, compare you to your peers, help you get performance in excess of your peers, and then compare you to whoever's at the top of the market. These are some of the kind of comments from people that we've worked with. Our customers are typically CFOs, CIOs, and COOs. So the outcomes of working with us. So we think AI is going to help people discover monetizable opportunities, be able to deliver work faster, and give you the analytics you need to make decisions. So that's a little bit about us. Now I'm going to very quickly show you the tool. For the past COO for the city of Chicago,
Next
we
time,
did.
have your camera on a little bit, check yourself out.
I'm sorry? Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, terrific. So for the past CEO of the city of Chicago, we designed something called the Office of Analytics, Innovation, and Modernization. And this is a portal that we built. So in this portal, think about it as a repository of business cases, workflow, profiles on assets, and documentation and risk management. So in this case, we look at all spend as an investment in a monetizable outcome. So I can see the portfolio of all the different spend requests. I can look at my risk analytics. So I'm going to go through this quickly. I can look at budget appropriations by department or by category. I can go back in time, or I can project forward in time. This is me looking at categories. We've got grants, looking at grant funding, where the grant funding is coming and where it's going, who's received what money. So I'll spend a little bit of time on vendor payments. So now I can actually look and see all the spend. I can look at spend by category. So in this case, I can look at construction. I can pick any period. I can look at IT, see who we're doing business with. I can look at trends in certain categories. What we've done is we can break down any category and figure out where the efficiency opportunities are and what the trends in spend are. So there are different factors that we use: demand management, asset management, early pay, payment errors, and vendor-related efficiencies. So we can look at this with actuals, and we can actually look at projections. Here we looked at how much were they paying in reseller fees. So we can decompose all the different hard and soft components of cost. And another area where they had is being able to look at the minority spend by ethnicity. We'll look at here, we can look at all the contracts. So all the contracts that they have, I'll just do this. So there are 3,300 contracts. And I can actually go and actually look at the actual contract. So this will come up in a second and you'll see the actual contract. So it's a repository of really all the information you need to make decision. Sorry, I'm on a sandbox here. It's a little slow, but you'll see the actual contract will come up. 1 second here. I can look at my buying plans. I can look at the capital investment. So we did here is we did an application rationalization, data, and technology governance work for the airport system and looked at the capital programs, figured out where the technology spend was going to be in that. We can look at KPIs by different areas, look at labor spend, vendor spend, and even in asset management. We can look at even security related things on technology. So this would be an operating technology. So we have all the profile information on the things that we've bought, and we can see where all the connections to this asset are throughout the environment. Lastly, I'll just quickly show you how the business cases work. So I'll use an ERP example. So the idea is before people spend money, they have to submit a business case. So in this case, you would create a profile on the business case, and we can create ROI scenarios. So in this scenario, we can see like, what is the return? So if I'm buying something for the purpose of cost reduction, what's the return going to be? In this case, it would be 24 million. What's the investment? It's 2 million. And then what is the impact of time on this investment? If it takes you 10 months to get to start getting the return, you've got 2 months of return, and your return on investment would be $2 million. If I could get the same return in 6 months, my ROI goes from 2 million to 10 million. It's a 5x return. And then lastly, I can decompose all the different components of cost. So what we did is created a very large system integration effort, so we can look at all the project phases, the time, labor, and rate. And then we can break down efficiency in each one of those categories. So what we've seen here is we're able to identify almost 49% cost savings. So that is that's a little bit about us.
So Robert, we do have a quick question in the chat. Actually, we have a couple. The first one is, would you be able to speak to benchmarks?
Absolutely. So in a benchmark is, if you're looking at KPIs, what you can do is compare yourself to a competitor or somebody that's in your industry, or an internal benchmark. So if you're looking at an industry benchmark, so let's look at, in this case, for water. What are the KPIs that we have in a particular area? And then how are we doing against those KPIs? So we do have the ability to get KPIs and then compare you how you're doing, or benchmark information and compare you to how you're doing in any particular area. Does that answer your question?
I think I don't see any follow-up questions on that yet, but if so, we will come back to that.
Sure.
The second question, I will read this to you. The city of Chicago is a good example, as its missions, like the universities, are not focused on profit. Were there any unexpected benefits discovered for Chicago in this process?
What I would say, yes. One of the benefits are Chicago is facing a significant budget deficit. So when we started this project, we said two different things. One is, what if Chicago was the most efficient city in the world? So we actually worked backwards from identifying $2.5 billion of efficiency without sacrificing service quality. So if I could, let me see if I can just show you a slide on that and how we identified it. So we did here is we looked at, in this case, technology as an investment. So we looked at the different budget. So if we said technology is 4% of the operating budget, that's about $480 million. So we suggested to them what they should have is break down the IT budget between innovation, modernization, and legacy. So think about innovation as a process of discovering opportunities that would go into the capital budget. And over time, if you keep the innovation and modernization budget constant, you can modernize and actually dramatically eliminate the inefficiencies that are in that portfolio. So that's why we look at things in portfolios, because you can optimize a portfolio. So in this case, we looked at in revenue. So one of the things, we always start out by looking at spend as an investment in a monetizable outcome. So obviously, if you're public sector or quasi-public sector, profit is not what you're trying to gain, but you are facing some expense challenges. You want to make sure that you're optimizing the expense and maximizing revenue. So one of the things we discovered is they've got, so here's what I was showing you, that over time, by looking at things in portfolios, you can eliminate redundancies in the portfolio. Gives you more money for innovation, so you can get more outcomes faster for less money. So they had never really looked at the world that way. So that was a benefit. This is an example of where we looked at, for the state of Indiana, another public sector organization, where they have lots of small agencies and a few big ones. We showed them how they could eliminate 70% of redundant cost and get outcomes much faster. We looked at, let me just see here. Oh, in grants. We looked in grants. So in grants, the federal government tends to give you 10% administration on the usage of grants. But then once they distribute that money, there's another 10% of what's remaining. So we helped them figure out how to optimize the administrative discretion that was available in the grant pool. The same thing in the capital projects. Here's an example where we were able to use data to give them insights on how they could look at historical data so you can do predictive analytics. So I would say, yes, making sure there's data, good data, and we can also create synthetic data sets that model the real world. So I would say we were able to help them identify $2.9 billion of monetizable returns over a 4-year period, looked at innovation and modernization as investment. So it's 2.6 billion net of investment. So we looked at it really, again, from a technology, operations, and finance perspective. Does that answer your question?
I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. Oh,
Okay.
yes. Yes, they said that definitely does answer the question.
Terrific.
Okay. Not seeing anything else yet. So thank you very much. Lots of good information. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your time. And by the way, if we can ever be helpful on anything, listen, we'll help just to be helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would also like to thank all of our presenters today. There was a wealth of information presented. Also, a thank you to all of the participants for coming today. We appreciate your time and hope that you found the information helpful. Bernadette is sharing our contact information. Should you have any questions or need us to follow up on anything after this session. And as a reminder, you will receive a link to the recorded presentation, and we hope to see you all for the next meeting, which is scheduled for November 15th. Thanks again and have a good day, everyone.